Let me ask you something. When was the last time your faith made your life harder? Not easier, not more comfortable, harder. Because Jesus never said, "Follow me and everything will fall into place." He said, "Take the narrow path, the one most people avoid." Why? Because the narrow path doesn't feel good. It's uncomfortable, it's risky, it pulls you away from the crowd, it asks you to let go of what's easy, to say no when everyone else says yes, to keep walking even when no one claps for you. Wide is the road that leads to destruction, but narrow is the gate that leads to life, and few find it. Pause right here. Let that sink in. Few find it. If your life looks just like everyone else's, if you've never had to give something up to stay true to Jesus, if your faith has never cost you a relationship, a habit, or a reputation, then maybe, just maybe, you're not walking the narrow path. You're just calling the wide road Christianity and hoping it leads to heaven. This isn't a motivational message. It's a wake-up call. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. If your faith costs you nothing, it's not Christianity. It's just branding. You can't follow Jesus and stay the same. You can't walk with him and remain on the easy road. And if you're still listening, maybe it's because something inside you is ready to turn around. Not everyone will choose this path, but you still can. There was once a pastor who lived under a brutal regime, where preaching the gospel wasn't just discouraged, it was illegal, dangerous, life-threatening. But he kept preaching anyway. No compromise, no fear, until one night, they came for him. No warning, no mercy, they beat him, imprisoned him, tried to break him with silence and time. He spent years in a cold, dark cell, alone, forgotten by the world, but not by God. And when he was finally released, they asked him a single question: was it worth it? He didn't flinch. He didn't complain. He simply said, "I would rather die in the darkness with Christ than live in the false light without him." Let that hit you. He lost everything the world could offer and called it gain. That is the narrow path. It doesn't shine with comfort. It doesn't promise applause. It doesn't guarantee ease or explanation. But it does lead to life, real life, eternal life. This road isn't for the ones chasing clout. It's not for those who obey only when it's convenient. It's for the ones who choose surrender, even when it costs them everything. And now the question comes to you. Have you chosen the wide road because it's familiar? Or are you ready to walk the narrow one because it's right? If something in your spirit is trembling right now, don't ignore it. If this stirred something deep, don't silence it. Pause. Breathe. And if you're ready, don't just watch this and move on. Like this video. Share it. Speak it. Let the world know. You're not here to blend in. You're here to follow Jesus, for real. 1. Destroy the illusion of easy Christianity. Let's be honest for a second. Somewhere along the way, we were sold a version of Christianity that sounded more like a self-help seminar than the gospel Jesus actually preached. We were told that following Christ would fix our lives, that we'd be more successful, more peaceful, more fulfilled. And while those things can happen, they were never the point. Because if you open the Bible and actually read the words of Jesus, you'll find something that most people don't want to hear. He never promised it would be easy. In fact, he promised the opposite. If anyone wants to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. That's not a verse about good vibes. That's a declaration of war against your old self, your comfort, your pride. But somehow, we've replaced the cross with convenience. We've reduced faith to attending church once a week, listening to positive messages, and calling ourselves believers, while never letting Christ interrupt our plans. We don't preach about sacrifice anymore. We whisper about sin and apologize for being too intense. We want the crown, but we've lost our stomach for the cross. But here's the truth most people avoid. The real gospel will cost you something. If it hasn't, maybe you haven't truly followed it yet. I once met a man who left everything behind when he came to Christ. He was a successful business owner. When he chose to follow Jesus, he also chose to walk away from shady deals, dishonest gain, and even some of his closest friends. He lost money, reputation, even family. But you know what he told me? I lost the life I built with my hands, but I found the life God was trying to build in me all along. That's it. That's what this is really about. This path isn't about perfection, but it is about surrender. And surrender is never convenient. So let me ask you, have you given Jesus your Sunday schedule or your whole life? Have you let him into your Instagram bio or into your habits, your decisions, your hidden compromises? Because the narrow road won't let you stay the same. It will push you, stretch you, break you. But on the other side of that breaking is real freedom. And this leads us to something even harder to face. Let's say you're ready to give up comfort. But what about approval? What happens when obedience to God makes you look foolish in front of people you love? When faith costs you popularity? When silence would be easier? But truth demands to be spoken? That's where most people stop. But if you're still with me, let's keep going. Strategy number 2 is about choosing obedience over applause. And it might just separate the crowd from the called. 2. Say no to popularity. Yes to obedience. There's something in all of us that still wants to be liked. Even when we say we don't care what people think, somewhere deep down, we still hope they'll approve, that they'll nod in agreement, that they'll understand our decisions. But here's the hard truth. Obedience to God will not always earn you applause. In fact, sometimes it will cost you the very people whose approval you crave most. Because Jesus never called you to be popular. He called you to be holy, not admired, not relevant, not comfortable, holy. And that means there will be moments, maybe many moments, where doing what's right before God will make you look wrong before the world. You'll say no to things everyone else says yes to. You'll speak up when silence is expected. You'll walk away when staying would make you more likable. I remember a young woman who worked in media. She was rising fast, smart, talented, respected. But when God called her to walk in truth, she began to speak out about her convictions. Slowly, the doors that once opened easily started closing. People unfollowed, friends distanced. Her name was no longer celebrated, but she didn't stop. And when I asked her why, she said, "I'd rather disappoint man for a moment than disappoint God for a lifetime." That's obedience. That's the kind of courage the narrow road demands. Because let's be real, the world doesn't hate Christianity because of Jesus the healer. The world resists Jesus the King, the one who asks for submission, not just admiration. And when you start walking like Jesus, you'll feel that resistance too. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're finally doing something right. Woe to you when everyone speaks well of you. That's what Jesus said. Not exactly the kind of verse we put on t-shirts, but it's the kind of truth that keeps your soul anchored when the crowd walks away. And this is where the journey gets even more personal. What happens when obedience doesn't just cost you popularity, but your own dreams? What do you do when God says, "Let go"? Wait, trust me, even if you don't understand. That's what we explore in Strategy 3-. Embrace the offense of the gospel, because if truth doesn't shake you, it won't shape you. 3. Embrace the offense of the gospel. Let's be clear about something most people avoid. The gospel is offensive, not because it's cruel, not because it's unloving, but because it tells the truth, even when the truth hurts. The gospel doesn't pat your ego. It confronts it. It tells you that you can't save yourself, that you are not enough without Christ, that your desires, your pride, your ambitions, all of it has to die for you to truly live. And let's be honest, that's not a message the world wants to hear. The world says, trust yourself, follow your heart, chase your truth. But the gospel says, deny yourself, crucify your flesh, follow Christ. The gospel doesn't invite you to feel better. It invites you to die better, so you can live for something eternal. That's why it offends, because it exposes the lie that we're fine just the way we are. It forces us to confront sin, not rename it, not justify it, but repent of it. I remember a friend who once said, I love Jesus, but I don't like the parts of the Bible that make people uncomfortable. And I had to tell him, if the gospel never offends your flesh, it's not the gospel. Truth will never be trendy. And if you're living for approval, you'll be tempted to tone it down, to stay quiet when God calls you to speak, to choose peace with people over loyalty to truth. But silence, when truth is needed, is not kindness. It's compromise. And sometimes, silence is betrayal. So speak the truth. With love, yes. With wisdom, absolutely. But speak it anyway. Because if the gospel offended the Pharisees, if it offended Rome, if it offended the crowds who once shouted, Hosanna, but later yelled, crucify him, then it will offend today too. And if your life is centered on truth, don't be surprised when it makes people uncomfortable. Let it, because the gospel is not meant to be palatable. It's meant to be powerful. And that brings us to the next level of surrender. What if embracing truth doesn't just offend others, but requires you to give up what you want most? What if the gospel doesn't just challenge your pride, but tells you to wait, to trust, to release control? That's where we go next. Strategy 4, discipline over desire. Because following Jesus isn't about chasing what feels good. It's about choosing what forms you. 4. Discipline is greater than desire. Let's be real. If we're being led by our emotions, we'll only follow Jesus when it feels right. When the worship hits, when life is peaceful, when obedience aligns with what we already want. But that's not surrender. That's convenience dressed up in spiritual language. True discipleship isn't built on desire. It's built on discipline. Desire fluctuates. Discipline stays. Desire says, I'll pray when I feel like it. Discipline says, I'll pray because I need to breathe. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. The question isn't, do I feel close to God? The question is, have I trained my soul to stay close, regardless of what I feel? I once knew a man who treated prayer like gym training. He set a time. He showed up daily, rain or shine, tired or awake, motivated or not. No mood swings, no drama, no excuses. And when I asked him how he stayed so consistent, he said something I'll never forget. I don't wait for my soul to want God. I train it to return to Him, even when it doesn't. That's the difference between the crowd and the called, between those who casually believe and those who build a life of fire, not flickers. Because let's be honest, you'll never feel like forgiving someone who hurt you. You won't feel like denying temptation at midnight. You won't feel like fasting when life is already hard. But that's where power is forged, in the choices no one sees. Discipline builds something deeper than emotion ever can. It creates spiritual reflex. It forms character. It prepares you to withstand storms, not just enjoy sunsets. And this isn't about performance. It's about preparation. Because if you're going to walk the narrow road, you can't rely on goosebumps. You need roots. And that leads us to a harder question. What happens when God doesn't move on your timeline? When discipline turns into waiting, and waiting feels like silence? Will you still follow? When the results don't come quickly? That's what we face next. In Strategy 5, walk alone if you must. Because the road to glory often goes through seasons of being unseen. 5. Walk alone if you must. Let's face it, one of the hardest things about walking the narrow path is walking it alone. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. We were made for connection, for affirmation, for understanding. But the truth is, when you choose obedience, not everyone will come with you. Some will distance themselves, some will mock you, and some will love the old version of you more than the one God is building now. And when that happens, you'll have a choice to make. Will you slow down so others feel comfortable? Or will you keep walking, even if no one claps? Giop knew what that kind of loneliness felt like. He didn't just lose his wealth. He didn't just lose his children. He lost the understanding of those closest to him. His friends blamed him. His wife told him to curse God and die. And heaven, silent. And yet, with broken skin, a bleeding soul, and no answers in sight, Giop whispered words that still echo across eternity. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. That's not blind optimism. That's fierce, unshakable faith. Because sometimes the real test of devotion isn't how loud you can sing in church, but how long you can worship when you're the only one still singing. You might pray and feel nothing. You might obey and lose relationships. You might stand for truth and feel like the last one standing. But if God is with you, you're not really alone. And even in the dark, you can walk with a steady step. Not because the road is clear, but because the one who called you is still trustworthy. But here's where things get real. What if walking alone isn't the hardest part? What if the greatest challenge is giving up everything you built to chase a purpose only God can see? What if your legacy isn't found in your status, but in your surrender? That's what we explore next. Strategy 6. Fight for legacy, not likes. Because when the world forgets your name, heaven still remembers your faith. 6. Fight for legacy, not likes. In today's world, it's easy to confuse attention with impact. We chase numbers, follows, views, hearts on a screen. And somewhere along the way, we start thinking that our worth, our witness, is measured by how visible we are. But here's the truth. You don't need to go viral to be valuable in the kingdom. You don't need a platform to leave a legacy. You just need faith that endures. The people who walk the narrow road don't leave behind trending videos. They leave behind footprints of obedience that shake generations. They're not remembered because they were loud. They're remembered because they were faithful when no one was watching. You think of Abraham. He wasn't a celebrity, but his quiet yes to God became the foundation of a covenant. You think of Ruth, just a woman gleaning in a field, yet her devotion opened the bloodline of Christ. They didn't chase popularity, they chose purpose. And make no mistake, hell doesn't fear influencers, it fears intercessors. It fears the quiet ones who wake up early to pray, the ones who forgive in silence, the ones who say no to compromise behind closed doors. Because real legacy doesn't shine under stage lights. It's built in secret, formed in suffering, forged in faith. You don't need the world to know your name. You need heaven to whisper, "Well done." So stop performing. Start planting. Start living like someone who believes this life is not the end. Start investing in a legacy that echoes beyond your years. Because when the applause fades and the world moves on, your surrender will still be written in eternity. Now we've reached the turning point. You've heard the 6 strategies. You've seen the cost. You've felt the tension between comfort and calling. So now the real question rises. Are you ready to walk the narrow path? Not just believe in it. Not just admire it, but live it, no matter the cost. In the final section, we'll bring it all together. This is where belief becomes action. Let's close strong. Don't just agree with the truth, live it. If you're looking for the easy way out, you can stop this video now, because nothing about the narrow path is easy. It's not built for comfort, it's built for conviction. But if something in you is still awake, if your spirit is stirring, if you felt that holy tension pulling at your soul, then welcome. You're not here by accident. You're here because you've had enough of casual Christianity, enough of blending in, enough of talking about Jesus while living like he's just an accessory. You're here because deep down, you want to be one of the few who walk in when others walk away, the few who stay faithful when no one's watching, the few who choose obedience over applause. That's the narrow path, and only the bold walk it. So let's remember what we've seen. You tore down the lie that faith is supposed to be easy. You said no to the need for approval, and yes to holy obedience. You embraced the gospel not just when it comforts, but when it convicts. You chose discipline over emotional highs. You kept walking, even when you had to walk alone. And most of all, you stopped chasing likes and started living for legacy. That's the kind of life that shakes the gates of hell. That's the kind of surrender heaven can't ignore. But don't just feel this moment. Follow through. Don't just watch this video and go back to normal. Don't let conviction turn into comfort again. Don't just agree with the truth. Live it. Let this be the moment you burn the bridges behind you. Let this be the day you say, "No more halfway faith." Let this be the hour you step into full surrender. And if you're ready, really ready, to walk this road no matter the cost, then hit subscribe. Not because it helps the channel, but because it tells the world, you've made up your mind. No turning back, no shrinking down, no apology. Welcome to the narrow path. Let's walk it together.